folks, we previously talked about how we create a document for strategic value, how we make sure the document hangs together and satisfies its purpose and is also physically appealing. So we're talking about strategy and macro issues. Well, today we're going to be putting our document under the magnifying glass, under the microscope, and we're really getting down to the small stuff, the micro issues. So today is truly about the little things, the things that make our document have good sentence structure, the things that make our document actually grammatically correct, things that actually make our document hang together at a very detailed level. So some things to think about when we start. It's a bad humor. You know, who needs rhetorical questions? Sentence fragments, eliminate. I love it. And the funny thing is, ironically, whenever I'm giving feedback to students, when I point out that they have a sentence fragment, I usually write the word sentence fragment, which are indeed a sentence fragment. So even instructors are not immune from these kinds of mistakes. So again, why is spell check so important? I love this particular example from a second grader. I like Mrs. Edwards. She is my teacher. I like it when she does math with us. Spelling is important. It is important to make sure that you are spelling correct. So, guys, some of the other things we're going to be talking about today, because we're talking about making documents easy and accessible for everyone. Our good friends at Forbes are telling us at this point it's time to start eliminating jargon. When I start talking about jargon, we're talking about words that are specific to disciplines, that are specific to industries. For example, be sparing with your jargon and be careful with it. If you're talking to nothing but industry insiders, people within your company, you might be just fine. But avoid some of these cliches too, in terms of things such as thinking outside the box, ducks in a row, taking subjects offline, all these things. In terms of the most hated phrases in business right now, anybody who does anything innovative at this point, it is the Uber for this or the Uber for that, or if it's mission critical. At this point, the Internet of Things has lost all meaning as well because virtually every device is connected. We're living in the Internet of Things, so it's really a catchphrase that's getting lost in the shuffle at this point in time. So what are some of the other things that people hate, the other phrases that are becoming annoying? I've never heard somebody referred to as a mompreneur, but apparently that's one that is annoying people as well. Synergy, however, is a word that probably can go away. So let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today. And that is how we edit to make our documents more clear, how we make sure we have a good and appropriate style and limit the amount of jargon to what's appropriate for our particular audience. So we're really talking about making our documents pop. So let's get into editing for brevity. Why do we do this? Well, as we've talked many times, we all have more competing things for our attention, and especially supervisors and managers. We consider it. Anytime we're writing, if we're putting something in writing, potentially, we're showing consideration for our audience because instead of requiring them to meet with us and have a conversation, we're giving them a chance to consume content at their leisure or their free time. And they can read more quickly than we can say things to them to begin with. If we're talking about busy business people who are working in time-sensitive industries, they have less time than anybody, so we want to make sure we're particularly kind to this audience. So how can we do this? Well, first and most obvious is be direct. Keep your sentences short. Think about why you're writing. I know that in academia, and this runs counter to a lot of the things we talk about in academic writing. If you read an academic journal, one thing most journals are not is direct, and another is they are not is short. Well, business writing can be direct and short. Remember why you're writing. And if you've got somebody who's time sensitive, get to the point if you can. Cut as far as you can cut, but no further. I have oftentimes in this class had students who've reduced entire assignments to bullet points, and that's sometimes too far. You cannot cut length if it takes content with it. So cut as much as you can cut. You want to cut all the fat out, but you still want to have some steak. So we're going to talk about how we can cut dead wood. Dead wood is stuff that's no longer serving the tree. These are words that, for example, are phrases that do nothing more than really add length to document. As you know, as previously stated, without a doubt, why do you need to have these? And my most hated phrase, what is more? I see that constantly in academic writing. What is more? What does that sentence even mean, or that phrase even mean? Without a doubt, if you are already affirming what you're writing, hopefully you've made a good enough argument to not have to use that phrase. The bottom line, if the verbiage is not serving a purpose, get rid of it. So some of the things, too, that we're talking about in terms of taking zip out of our language. Any kind of passive verbiage. To be is great for Shakespeare. It's not great when you have a business audience. It just all we're doing is adding an equal sign in the sentence. These are verbs that take energy out of your sentence because they don't really say anything. Is, will, can, tend. Oh my goodness, that's so passive. Let's get active with this stuff. So how about this? Plan A is inefficient in terms of production. How can we make that a better sentence? Why not say Plan A produces efficiently? Or even better, investment bankers tend to appear to have a tendency. How much more passive can we get? We can write investment bankers tend, if we still want to use the word tend, for example. We will set an agenda. What does that mean? We will plan an agenda. Set is passive. Plan. Oh, I like the sound of that word. It sounds like we're making things happen. So in terms of phony subjects, our good friend Dr. Phil, who always is encouraging people to get real, let's talk about how we can take some of these phony subjects that are taking zip out of our verbiage and make our sentence pop a little better. So things like this, it, and they, these are great in conversation. There was a great instructor at St. Francis University, a guy named Dr. McElnay, who is a legend at this university, and I was fortunate enough to have him for a management class as an undergraduate. If you submitted a paper to him that had the word this in it with nothing behind it, he would write in the margins, what, fishing? With a question mark. His point to us was this is a word that can be replaced with something specific, and by referring to the term fishing because he loved to fish, he showed us the absurdity of using vague verbiage when you could use direct terminology. So let's be specific. Let's give you some examples. Let's find out what is it. So what is it? This will help us improve sales. Well, what the heck is this? This initiative will help us improve sales, for sure. Or even better, the new initiative will help us improve sales. Again, we're putting emphasis in here. We're putting specifics. We're giving things for people to hang on to and be interested in. So what is it? It's important to note these improvements will save us money. How about we prove that? We can save money with these improvements. Or even better, these improvements will save us money. Oh, I love that third sentence. What manager in the world does not want to hear about improving the company and saving money? So what is it? They want value for their money. Well, who the heck are they? Who is that? So our customers want value for their money. There are many areas for improvement. Oh, so bland. How about many areas can be improved? Or even better, we can improve many areas. Why not make it active? Be active as possible. Get people interested. So prepositions can also be areas that suck energy out of a sentence. And again, a little irony there about prepositions. Use them with care. So of, I consider to be the devil. We'll illustrate that momentarily. So love this sentence. This is fantastic. Central to our understanding of the problem of the organizational structure in the XYZ division of the ABC company is the chain of command between the position of the division vice president and the subordinate departments, because although all of them are under this office, none of them is directly connected with it. Well, holy crap, that is one long sentence, and the word of allows us to keep on making it longer and longer and longer. What are the important points? Well, we know we got a chain of command issue, and we know that the division VP and subordinate departments are all under a specific division, but what does the statement even mean? We've put so many ofs in there, we can no longer even make sense of it. How about this? The organizational problem at the ABC Company's XYZ division is centered in the unclear connection between the division vice president and subordinate departments. Still a very long sentence that could be broken down even further. In fact, let's go back to that for a second. If I were trying to break this down, I would even make this possibly two sentences or bullet points even. Why not? Why not be direct with this stuff if you can? So if you've got more than one preposition in a sentence, you're getting into compound prepositions, and it's even worse, even with my disturbing image there. I am writing in order to list the potential issues in regard to the Jameson account in advance of the client visit. Oh my, lots of prepositions there. How about this? I am writing about the Jameson account to list the potential issues before the client visit. More direct, easier for the audience, everybody's happy. If you want to get really direct, the issues with the Jameson account are bullet, bullet, bullet. Why not? Why not make it that direct? And then we get into the idea of what we refer to as elongated verbs with preposition. 2 plus 2 equals bore. I wish I could take credit for that. I really do wish I could take credit for that. It's a great phrase, particularly for people who like plays on grammar. Maybe you guys not so much. I can't see it from this side of YouTube. So let's continue. The initiative is intended to give raises to deserving employees. How about, better yet, the initiative is intended to raise good employee salaries. Or even better, the initiative will raise deserving employee salaries. Again, be direct. So page 75 from our text. I love our text. It's so direct. It's so wonderfully clear and concise. But here's a great chart of prepositions to avoid or use sparingly and ways to make your verbiage more active. Again, page 75. Check it out. So in terms of sentences, my general rule in business writing is 12 to 24 words, but that's not hard and fast. Sometimes if you have the choice of getting a couple extra words in or having to write another entire sentence, sometimes a few extra words is not so bad. Look at the sentence based on whether or not it's telling a consistent and complete story. Are you keeping with the theme of the document? Has the idea been covered thoroughly? That should be your bigger concern. If you've got the word "and" more than once in a sentence, you're putting probably too many ideas into the same sentence. If you've got too many things in parentheses or too many lead-up phrases to a particular point, you may also be taking the key points out of your document without even realizing that you're doing it. So here's a great example from our text. Regardless of their seniority, all employees who hope to be promoted will continue their education either by enrolling in the special courses to be offered by the ABC company, scheduled to be given on the next 8 Saturdays beginning on September 22nd, or by taking approved correspondence courses selected from a list available in the staff development office. All right, first of all, if you're a reasonably fit person and you find yourself running out of breath by the time you read a sentence, the sentence is probably too long. This sentence is like a paragraph. How can we break this down a little bit here? Well, we can break it into several sentences. Regardless of their seniority, all employees who hope to be promoted will continue their education by one of 2 ways, period. First, they may enroll in the special courses to be offered by the ABC company, scheduled to be given on the next 8 Saturdays beginning on September 22nd, period. Second, they may take approved correspondence courses selected from a list available in the staff development office, period. Not too bad. We can break it up numerically. I like this a little better. You know, this is one of these things that we could do that. Or we could even, as I love, put it into bullet points. Look at that wonderful white space, and look how easy it is to skim that content and information. A much better approach, if I do say so myself. So again, variety is the spice of life. Anytime we start thinking about spice, man, I love spice in my food. I think you've got to use it sparingly. For example, our long sentences are our meat and our potatoes, our vegetables, the things that make up the dish. And then we got our Tabasco and cilantro that we use to spice it up a little bit. I love cilantro. Not a lot of people do, but I love it. But if you put too much in a dish, it can kill it. You need just the right amount. All this stuff helps us to have a natural variety flow. If all we're doing is speaking in long or short sentences, if we're speaking in long sentences, we just ramble. If we talk short, we come across like a robot. Nobody likes robots. It's tough to listen to them. And it becomes very monotonous. So we want to be able to have a flow between long and short sentences, inflections, all these things that come across in writing when we mix it up. So what about style? We talked about how we are trying to avoid being too long or being too verbose. Let's start talking about style, how formal or passive we have to be versus active, lovely business writing, and how to decide how much jargon we're going to use. So let's get into it. So what's your style? I put this on for a purpose. The guys who are down here wearing the overalls, or as we say in central Pennsylvania, overhauls, are wearing the right clothes for the market that they're involved in. These guys are dealing with alligators as opposed to the guys who are hanging out and apparently catalog models on the West Coast somewhere. The style is not right or wrong. It's what's appropriate for your audience and making sure you're gearing it correctly. So think about what kind of style that you're going to have in your writing. So when you are writing to an audience, you don't have a chance of getting feedback in real time from them. We've got to really play it a little safe when it comes to tact, because something we misstate or that comes across the wrong way is permanent once it's in writing, particularly in the internet era. So we need to think about this stuff in terms of our style. That doesn't mean we can't be more informal and more direct. It means we have to be careful with how we apply style. So here are things that don't work in writing. I know this sounds obvious, but I've seen it constantly. Some people think it's okay in business documentation to use profanity. I don't think it's okay. I mean, I read articles in Inc. magazine, for example, Wired, that sometimes people are quoted using profanity, and I'm not saying I find it offensive, I just don't think it's appropriate for business writing. Humor generally does not come across well in writing unless you truly, truly know your audience, because we're all different. And I use this as an example. If you would think about how a couple of guys out on a Friday night talk to each other in the bar, and the language they're using to each other, it might sound like these guys hate each other with some of the terms they're using. In reality, these folks have a different lexicon when they're around each other in a casual setting. It works in person. It does not necessarily work in writing. So what's your style? Well, it should be based on your audience. Are you writing to somebody who is your peer, somebody who's above you or below you in the chain? Are you credible with them? If you're credible, you can be incredibly direct with most audiences. Are you writing to people inside or outside your company? It's like the idea of using manners inside the house or at your friend's house when you're a kid. Your mom tells you to make sure you're behaving when you're going to somebody else's house. Also, what type of business are we in? If we're in academia, for example, we tend to be a more, I think, a culture that cares about people's feelings a little more. Some more direct forms of business, maybe not so much. So what's your business and what culture are you in? So also, what's the nature of the message that we have? Are we delivering good or bad news? People don't want to wait for something that's bad news. Get to the point. We also hope that we are being direct when it's appropriate. For example, news that means people need to act quickly needs to be direct. And also, the style should be still lending to high skim value. For example, this is the wrong way to deliver such a message. The medium is simply not appropriate, and I do use opportunities to insert bad memes once in a while. My point is that this is not the appropriate way to tell somebody a very sensitive issue. If we're getting even more micro, for example, how formal do we need to be? If we're getting too cold, this is the Three Bears example. If you remember Goldilocks and the Three Bears, there were 3 bowls of porridge, which is oatmeal. The first bowl was too hot. The first bowl was too cold. The middle was just right. If your message is coming across too direct, too hot and fast, it's too informal. If it's too cold, it might be too informal. We want just right. In terms of passivity, that's going to vary by audience and vary by culture as well. And how much jargon we're going to use is also going to vary as well. So again, if you are going too cold, too formal, you sound like you're full of yourself. If you sound pompous or blasé, that's probably not appropriate for business writing. Anything you're writing that does not sound like you would have written it is probably too formal. There are rare exceptions to this. Things like really, really bad news, for example, where you've got to beat around the bush, but most of the time you should be a little more direct. So sometimes, for example, we get into things like evasive verbiage. A mistake was made. That means nobody wants to take credit for the mistake. Or what they refer to as weasel words. Some may think, or it seems. Again, it's okay in business writing to use I if it's something that you're directly saying about yourself. If you're finding yourself avoiding that word I, you might actually be too formal. And again, in business writing, generally speaking, as opposed to academic writing, contractions are fine. If you're spelling out, if everything's do not, could not, etc., you might be too formal. Business-like is just right. I love this. This is, again, out of our text. Our verbiage is warm and forceful like a handshake. It means we're not hurting somebody, but we are being firm and warm and open. And it's the just right way of communicating. Generally speaking, business is about relationships, and so should our writing be about connecting with the reader. So short words and phrases, somewhat conversational. You can use personal pronouns. For example, if you know somebody, why not use you and they and those sorts of things once you've established identities. Don't overuse them. Don't use them for vague purposes, but it's okay to be somewhat informal. Again, if we're getting too informal, this is something, and I don't mean to put any of my millennial colleagues on report here, but it's simply where we've grown up. If you are getting too direct with people, if you're using too much casual tone, if you maybe are speaking to somebody who really is your superior in a way that's a little too familial, before you know them, you could be coming across as too hot. And this is, again, something that we're dealing with from a cultural standpoint. Even in 2020 and beyond, the majority of businesses in this country are controlled by older Gen Xers and more or less baby boomers, even some traditionals, and people who are not going to deal well with verbiage that is too hot. If you have never been invited to use somebody's first name and you're addressing them, use their title. It's just a safer way to go. If they have invited you to use their first name, please do so. That's a great way to build connection, but be cognizant of those things. Again, there's no excuse in the modern era to have repeated bad grammar or punctuation. It just is not acceptable when every single device we use has some kind of a check for that. In terms of, because we are talking about communications in general, even if this is a writing chapter, in-person multitasking is simply not acceptable, regardless of what generation you're in at this point. Show time and attention to the person who is with you. And also, I think you need to consider the message you're sending. Are you using the right medium? For example, an email is more formal than a social media message, even though the barriers between us and work and personal lives are thinner and thinner. And we've got plenty of social media relationships with our coworkers on non-work social media. Know what's the appropriate medium as well for the message that you're sending. So there are times when we've got to use passive tone. And that means either we're de-emphasizing the writer or trying to avoid responsibility. You know, for example, if we're getting into other cultures, particularly collective cultures, we want to basically come across as de-emphasizing the individual. Anytime you can avoid it, it's good. There are times when it's unavoidable. It makes it more passive and difficult for the reader as well. So let's talk about how we can convert some passive phrases into active verbiage. Let's turn these sentences around. The methods are explained in the appendices. Why not just say the appendices explain the methods? Or the website redesign is expected to achieve. How about the website design will likely achieve, or will achieve, if you know it will. Improved relationships will be gained. How passive? This approach will yield maximum results. I like that way better. Market share will be increased by, or how about just increased market share? So again, passive is generally not what we want. In terms of jargon, remember this phrase: nobody likes to feel stupid. I think that there are times when jargon makes sense. If we're in a room full of engineers and we're talking about engineering documents and we're using specific acronyms or terminology, or we're giving them documentation, we're actually showing them consideration by being efficient. That being said, there are plenty of audiences that may not know our jargon, particularly management, who need to have things spelled out for them. The less you can make people feel stupid, the more likely they're going to approve your idea. When I was running an IT department, I also would ask my staff of very intelligent people to explain technical concepts in highly common verbiage. And my point is, if you can't explain it in simple terms, do you really know it well? So think about that. Folks, thank you for your time and attention. I really enjoyed this discussion of micro issues, and I hope you have a great day.